I am unashamed. What about you?
So welcome back to Unashamed. Jase, you were telling us a story about your poker reunion. I thought it...
Yeah, for all you legalists out there, you might already go do something else.
Hide your ears.
But I am not a gambler, and if you do things for entertainment purposes, it's fine anyway.
I always love the disclaimer. What's your line, Jase? It's not gambling if you can't lose.
Yeah, if I know I'm going to win, see my wife, who's never.
You're not gambling, but I wonder if some of the people who you're taking their money are. So, Robertson.
You're right. So I knew you don't even know the story I'm fixing to tell. But when we were teenagers, and we read verses like, "The Lord went to these groups of people, the tax collectors and the sinners." Well, these tax collectors, what do they do? What do tax collectors do?
Collect taxes.
They collect taxes. So there's a game that's called poker, and it's a similar function as to a tax collector. People bring money, they sit down, and there's a tax to teach you how to play this game better. And so the same guys, not just me.
So you're the tax collector.
Yes.
Okay, I get it.
In this setting.
By the way, this is not in the Bible. But
this is not in the Bible.
Your verse, I was fixing to say, there's no verse that speaks out against it. Not
that
one.
Is true. In fact,
there shall be no gambling with the hard-earned.
But actually, Jase, your analogy is pretty good, because the people that are paying the tax do not like the tax collector. I mean, they're coming, but you're not exactly a liked man.
So we played at Willie's for years, and brought a lot of people to Jesus through our ventures, as hard as that is to believe.
Yep.
And we would tell people, look, if you can afford this, or if you have a problem, or if this leads to something else, we would have numerous conversations with people frivolously using their money.
Right.
But what we were doing as a family is, playing cards for small amounts of money to where everybody's budgets are.
And every year on the vacation, everybody play. I mean,
everybody
wives,
plays.
The
and
kids.
I'll let you tell who usually wins. Zach has been a part of some of those games.
I've been a part of some, and before it was poker. You have to keep in mind this goes back to Monopoly, to spades, to dominoes. It's the hearts, to rook. This is not. This is not just poker. This is everything, right?
And for you who are saying this is sinful, I will confess my sins. For years, when I had no money, the only way I could make money to spend, have money, because whatever I did for my job, I gave Missy all my money, because we didn't have much. Yep. So if I wanted any money, I had to go play cards. And it's like that golfer said. Who was the golfer who said, "You want pressure?" Because they said, how do you? What was the guy?
Yeah, it's Lee Trevino.
Lee Trevino. He said, how do you get up there and handle the nerves when you're
putting for a putt to win the tournament?
Win the tournament and win $1 million. He said, "Oh, that's not pressure at all." He said, "What's pressure is when I was up and coming, and I got to make a putt for $5, and I didn't have $5 in my pocket."
That's right.
And so
that's pressure.
You either learn how to play this game of skill where luck is involved, called poker, or you lose all your money and go do something else. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So about a few nights ago, we had a bit, because we've all gotten busy. I don't play cards like I used to. I try to show up at a game here and there, but I hadn't played in weeks. And we had a little poker reunion type of.
We're getting the band back together.
It was Willie, the people in my family who were there, Willie, myself, and Si, and we had a little poker reunion. Remember the time we used to play down at Willie's and all this? And it was so funny is nobody ever got mad except Willie when he lost. I mean, there's famous stories about him humming the cards out through the yard or whatever. And having said that, Willie is an excellent card player. So
that, to Zach's point, that goes back to our youth, because I can remember a few storm-offs during games from Willie back when we were kids. You know,
exactly.
So he's known for that.
And so,
I've never played a game of cards.
well,
Nothing.
so you're off the hook, Phil.
Yep.
You didn't lead us down this.
Not because of religious reasons. I just looked at that thing. I said, "Oh no, looked like to me." I thought about the losers.
I was gonna give y'all a little insight because I know some of our guys play and gals, and so I was gonna tell you about the game. Now I'm not telling y'all this story because I ended up being the big winner, but that is exactly what happened. So I guess I just got lucky.
Hey,
But well, it was so funny because we played the game, all the usual suspects, we used to play, and there was a couple of guys who we play with now there. They just wanted to watch. And Cy's there, and Cy makes the game fun. Now, I'm going to be honest, Cy rarely wins, and Cy's got plenty of money, so nobody's worried about, about that. But and the reason it's not that Cy doesn't know how to play, and it's not that he's not a great player, but Cy has a flaw to his game, and it is that he wants to win every hand, no matter what. He plays every hand like he wants to win. Well, it's just the law of averages and odds and statistics.
Sometimes you just don't have the cards.
You don't have the cards. You can't win every hand. Sometimes you got to fold.
that seems
song,
like common sense. There.
yeah, you know that song, you got to know when to hold them and when to fold them?
Yeah.
Well, Cy just says you got to know when to hold them, and that's every hand. And I will beat you every So that's the flaw.
Well, one thing not in your favor out of all the individuals I've run up on, the only person that old Matt Dillon just didn't like was gamblers. He didn't like them because it would
I knew
produce
somehow
gunfire.
we would get back to Gunsmoke.
So, and these games are long, they're hours. That's why we don't have time to play anymore. So I started off, I lost, the first couple hands. I went busted. So, I like our game is you just rebuy.
Yeah.
And so I did. So I started off bumpy, but it's a long game. It's a stay in.
You hadn't played in a while.
Well, no, it's more about putting the odds and percentages in your favor. There's a reason casinos are successful. So if you can develop a game where you have the odds and in your favor, all you need is time. Eventually.
So you were kind of priming the pump, too, just to let them know,
It's just a mathematical equation.
We're going to beat him tonight.
You come up with a formula where the odds are more in your favor, and the longer you sit there, the better chances you have.
Unless you don't know how to fold them.
Well, right. If you're going against the odds, guess what? You're going to lose.
So I need to listen to more Kenny Rogers.
What time did the game start? What time did it start? And what time did it end? Like, how long are we talking here?
The game started at 7 o'clock. The game ended, I think, at 1:30ish. And, yeah. So,
I know you've seen this before, Jace.
oh, boy.
Here we go.
Here we go. So, Phil, I was doing this as a prelude to any Bible activity.
Yeah, well, I was just saying,
All right, go ahead.
it's necessary to choose some of the men since the Judas.
You're going the casting the lot.
Casting
That's
the
true.
lots, and I'm thinking,
There's
that's
actually
just kind
more.
of luck of the draw.
There's actually more evidence of gambling, in the Bible than there is what we're doing, because usually the same people win. So let me finish the story. So, because there were two big hands that I wanted to tell you about. So one is Willie played really well, executed a couple of nice bluffs. Willie's a solid player.
Yeah.
He's a mover and a shaker, and he has a lot of bells and whistles in his game, and but he's actually a very excellent player. So him and Cy, I was actually involved in the hand at the start. We were playing a game called Texas Hold'em, and I'll reveal the cards in their hands beforehand. So
It's called Texas Hold'em.
Yeah, and it's too long to explain that.
I don't even want to hear about it.
So Cy has pocket tens. He has two tens in his hand. I have ace king, and Willie has ace queen. Well, I would usually raise before the community cards come out. If you don't know how to play, read a book for the next 2 minutes. But I just called because Cy is so crazy that everything goes through Cy.
Yeah.
He raises all the time. He re-raises. So I was just waiting to see what Cy was going to do, So I have ace king. Cy raises. Cy's on my right.
Yeah.
And so I just called. Well, Willie, I think he just called. Yeah, he just called. So the flop comes out. There's a community cards. Yeah. There's a queen, and then there's 2 other meaningless cards, like a 7 and a 2. Well, Cy bets. And since I have ace king and there's no ace or king out there, because he bet big, I folded. Well, Willie re-raises Cy. Because
he's got a pair of queens.
He's got a pair of queens. Well, Cy has 2 10s. Now, you don't have to be a card player to understand this. Willie is way ahead here. Because he has a pair of queens, and a pair of queens is better than a pair of 10s. The only way Cy could ever win, because you still have 2 community cards to come.
Yeah.
Cy's going to have to hit a 10. Well, there's only 2 left in the deck.
Out of 52.
That's why I gave you the speech about the odds and mathematics and percentages. Right now, Willie, if you don't know how to play cards, has Cy in his deer feeder. And Willie has the bullseye looking through the scope right behind the shoulder. It's all but over. The Cy then says, re-raise all in. Willie, call. I got ace queen. Cy turns over. I got 2 10s. Well, everybody's sitting there thinking, what is Cy doing? This is dumb. Next card.
10.
10.
What does Cy do? That's what
He says, booyah! He said, hey, the best hand won out. And then it was cricket. I said, Cy, you didn't have the best hand. Willie had a queen as Willie's gathering his gear up to exit. Willie's not rebuying after this. So I said, well, I had the best hand before. I was like, Cy, all the money went in when you were so far behind, you basically needed a miracle. One of the last 2 10s in the deck. So now he's feeding with adrenaline. And so he raises the next hand. Well, now I feel like as a card player, Cy's real vulnerable because it's just like battling when we did this illustration about the evil one.
So you'll know.
Yeah.
I'm never going to do that.
Well, let me tell you.
I'm never going to play cards. I've got enough. Texas Hold'em. I'm Texas Hold'em.
But look, Phil, I learned this from doing spiritual work.
My little brain can't handle it.
When a guy thinks too highly of himself or too low of himself, he becomes vulnerable at the table. Yeah.
Be careful when you stand.
Cy thinks I can do no wrong.
Oh, tonight's my
He's
night.
Got more money than anybody at the table. Next hand, I have the ace 3 of diamonds. Cy has the 8 deuce of diamonds, and he raises before the flop because he just won. Now he's raising with one of the worst hands.
He's bold now.
Oh, he's raising. Well, I don't know he has that, so I call him. Well, the 3 community cards come out there, and there's only 1 diamond, and there's no ace. But I bet because I'm trying to slow Cy down over here because he's just. So I'm representing. I don't know what I was representing because I had nothing, but I bet a smaller bet than I thought he was going to bet. It was a defensive bet. And, well, everybody folded except Cy. Cy has no pairs and no draws, and he calls because this is just what Cy does. Well, the next card is another diamond. So now there's 2 diamonds. It'll take another diamond for me to hit my flush, which is the best hand possible. But now that I see hope here, I bet big and try to get Cy off his hand. I'm bluffing with the best hand. I didn't know that. I actually have Cy technically beat. He's got 8 high. And so I bet big. Well, Cy calls. So I don't know what he's got. But he's thinking, I want another diamond because I'll have a flush. But I'll have a bigger flush because I have the ace of diamond. Well, wouldn't you know it, the last card is another diamond. I now not only have Cy beat, I have the best hand possible. I cannot be beat.
But he also has a flush, so he thinks he has the best.
He also has a flush. So look, I did something really clever. I bet small. So Si, he's got a flush. He says, I raise. He raises me,
He was trying to put fear in you.
which he broke another rule.
He didn't realize that you are the tax collector. That's what he didn't realize.
So I do a tell in poker because now since he raised me and I have the best hand possible, I had to look back down at my cards and make sure I had the best hand possible because I thought, what's this clown doing raising me? So I re-raise. I didn't go all in because I just didn't think he would call, but I re-raised him. And so I said, call, I got a flush. And I said, well, I have the best flush possible. He said, you're sneaky. And he said, I will break you and take every tip you got. And everybody laughed.
You sound like Festus Hagen on Gunsmoke.
So anyway, I finished this story to say, Si and I finished 1 and 2 on the night, which is crazy because he donked off half his money to me on that one hand. So that was the story.
At least it stayed among the family.
The story of the tax collector. All right. Well, that's a great way to lead into our podcast. We have 2 special guests. They're going to join us on the other side of the break, and I see that they're here. And so when we get back from our break, I'll introduce our guests. So one of our new sponsors, which I liked them right off the bat because of their name, it kind of made me chuckle.
Made you feel all warm and fuzzy.
It did, because their name is Jase Medical. And I thought, is it this like Jase, like my brother Jase? And it is. It's JASE Medical. And so when we were doing our call with these guys to kind of find out about their product and what they do, I was talking to the doctor who started this company. And he said that he had a dog named Jase that he loved, and also that Jase means healer in Old English. So Jase, your name in Old English is healer.
Yeah.
And now they're sponsoring our podcast. So it's not our Jase, but it is Jase Medical. And they have a product. What I love about it is it's a 12-month emergency supply called Jase Daily. And so for guys like me that take daily medication, you know, you get in a situation, maybe you're traveling, maybe it's rural, maybe there's a supply chain issue, and you're worried about being able to get your meds. And so you can purchase a 12-month emergency supply of your current daily prescription medication. And so it basically has you prepared, which is really good. Getting your prescription is simple. You go online, you fill out a form, then you get your Jase Daily prescription delivered right to your door. So they're going to give you that peace of mind. So you don't have to worry about storms, shortages, pandemics, whatever it is that's worrying you about it. Check them out. Go to jasemedical.com. Enter the code Unashamed at checkout for a discount on your order. So that's Unashamed is your promo code, jasemedical.com. So welcome back to Unashamed. We have a couple of guests that are joining us, Jase.
We do, and I know it's kind of the elephant in the room. How are we going to make this transition from me telling a poker story that went way too long? And so I now have thought about it, and I realize what the segue is for this. Because a wise man once said on the reason you should vote, it's not because you're voting, you're unlocking opportunity. Well, that's what I was doing when I was playing cards. I wasn't gambling. I wasn't playing cards. I was unlocking financial opportunity for my family and my well-being.
Well, yeah, I wonder who that politician was. Zach, do we know who he's talking about?
I think the words were in reference to unlocking spiritual opportunities, but nonetheless, yeah.
Although, actually, Jase has a perfect segue because our guest today, one of them happens to be a guy who knows about finances, so he might have something to say about that. So we got Allie Beth Stuckey, who does a great podcast. She's one of our fellow Blaze hosts, Relatable. I was telling somebody, Allie Beth, about your podcast. They said, she does that unrelatable podcast. And I was, wait.
You know what? To some people, it might be unrelatable. Hopefully to the right people, it's unrelatable.
It's very relatable. We always love having Allie Beth on. And as Jay said before we came on, our podcast intellect goes way up when Allie Beth.
You did. Oh, Allie Beth, you're a superstar in the podcast world, and it's awesome to see someone, especially of your young age, being so articulate, and especially with your faith comes through and your relationship with God. So
yeah, I feel like ours are the most spiritual podcast on Blaze, and I don't listen to all of them, but I definitely have listened to Allie's.
Well, I had never watched your podcast, Allie, until you were on ours, and so then I was like, man, I like this. I had a conversation with my lovely wife, who was already all over your podcast, and she was like, well, where you been, Jase? And because I've never listened to our podcast, but I've listened to several of yours since you were on here. So.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And so we are super excited today because not only do we have Allie Beth, but we also have her dad, Ron Simmons. Hello, Ron. Welcome to Unashamed.
Hey. Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks.
So Ron has written a new book that I have here in my formerly nicotine-stained hands. That's a Rush Limbaugh reference. It's called Life Lessons from the Little Red Wagon, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But Ron, you have, I read your book. It's excellent, by the way. And so you've done a lot. You were 3 times a Texas rep in the State House. You're a financial guy. The governor puts you in charge of things. I mean, you got a pretty amazing past. So we're just glad to have you on Unashamed.
Well, it's an honor to be here, especially with the connections that we have personally to the Robertson family through Junction City.
Exactly. And that's the first thing I want to ask, because I did not realize this. Well, Allie Beth had told us there was a connection, but until I read your book, I wasn't sure about what it was. So you said you moved to Junction City, Arkansas in 1973. And that immediately put my antenna up, because we got a movie about to come out that's set in that era. And so I have to know. So did you know us then? Did you know Dad? What did you know about the Robertsons in 1973? Is what I was wondering.
We knew you probably like you wouldn't want us to know you. We moved into the same. we moved into the same house that y'all lived in. There by the school. You remember that White House, Phil, that y'all lived in by the school?
Oh, no.
School had houses. We moved into that house. My dad was the band director after y'all, because you had left some of your dog residue behind. And
oh man,
and I left more residue behind than that. I can tell you that.
Well, you probably did, but we had a good spring cleaning. But yeah, we moved into that same house because my dad was the band director. And the people said, well, this guy named Phil Robertson used to live here, and he was out hunting all the time, and he was a football player at Tech, and then came to coach up here. And of course, I was coached by Al Bolin, which you've talked about Al in the past, and I was coached by Johnny Sweet, which you probably knew Johnny Sweet.
I knew them both,
and some of the other people that you.
By the way, I baptized Al while I was up there after about
probably 10 years later.
After his baptism, after I had repented, turned to God. Y'all saw the early stages, all bad. They made a movie of it. It's embarrassing. But Al was one that was an avowed atheist, and he called me after about 10 years, my conversion. First, he wanted me to keep running with him, drinking whiskey and all that. I said, nope, that one is dead, and this is the one that's alive. I said, I've turned my life over to God. So 2 years goes by, he calls. I think it was after about 10 or 12 years. I shared the gospel with him, baptized him, and 2 months later, he fell dead on the third base line.
Dad coaching third base at a high school baseball game. He coached me high school baseball and football. Yeah.
So they asked me, the family of Bolin, to come up there and do the funeral. I said, I don't even own a suit. I don't know. I don't even know whether I could do that. But they said, the family wants you to do the funeral. So him being a brother of 2 months, I went up there, and I told them what I told Al. He conquered death for us all.
Yeah. It was your return to Junction City, probably the first time.
It's the only time I've ever returned to Junction City was at the funeral of Al Bolin, which he
To preach the gospel.
preached the gospel.
Was that the first time you spoke to in public or no?
Pretty well.
Yeah.
Wow,
I
that's
just
pretty
told
amazing.
the audience,
Well,
that rest assured, he's a son of God. He is my brother. And I pointed to the casket where he was, his body, and I said, I shall see him again at the resurrection.
Wow.
Well, that was me.
Amen.
that was really good. Well, I thought you would enjoy this. You probably remember this. This was my jersey back at Junction City.
Oh, look at
So
there.
you would
The dragons.
remember the Dragons?
Yeah.
back then?
You know.
So,
Good, nice.
I know, it was amazing.
Oh.
So you were what, like a middle schooler when y'all moved there? Like,
yeah, I was seventh grade. So
Okay.
seventh grade. So just played junior high football there, and yeah.
Well, you
was.
know.
And then I finished high school there. I graduated from there.
yeah, I
as well.
saw your pictures in your book, which were amazing. And it took me back because, we were there on campus. And of course, our stories, Ron, are very similar because you kind of gained independence at 17 when you graduated high school. I did as well. Now, your story was much better because you went in a good direction. Mine was not so good. but we share that. And we both, I guess, started early because I was an early graduate like you. So it was, and we both married women named Lisa. So I thought,
Oh, there you go.
funny.
Yeah.
I like this guy. But as I was going to say, Jase, I hadn't thought about this until you mentioned the house. But when Jase was a toddler,
I was 4 during this time.
yeah, he got out one night and got under that house,
Here we go.
and we could hear him like say, "Mama, mama," but it's in the middle of the night, and we're searching the house looking for him. Do you remember this, Dad?
Oh, yeah.
And we're trying to find him.
I was trying to send y'all a message. Clean up what's going on inside this house, or I'm out of here. At 4 years old, I don't know why I did that.
Yeah.
But I just remember it was, and then you got a whipping, I think, after.
I think I did, and I'm still under protest about that.
Because we were all just reacting. Let's take a break. So we love all of our sponsors, obviously, of the Unashamed podcast because they're the ones that allow us to do what we do and get the gospel out there and have what I call good old Robertson Bible studies. But one of our sponsors, Barrel Buddy, to show you what kind of company this is and the kind of folks they are. So, Jase, yesterday I got an email from the guys at Barrel Buddy, and they sent me a devotional that had really impacted him. And so he wanted to send that to me. He said, you guys are doing great. We love the ads. We love what you guys are doing. But here's something that God had blessed me with. And I was like, now that's the kind of sponsors that you like to have, right?
Exactly, and of course, they know we all hunt, and don't underestimate, having a dirty gun. I mean, it's something we all have to do. I've cleaned guns for hours and hours and hours throughout.
Well, you spend as much time as we have, and you two more than me, out in the wild, out in nature with a gun. You definitely going to have a good way to clean it. And so that's what these guys do. They came up with a great product because there wasn't a really great way before. They had patches that I used to clean with, but they're square, and you're trying to get them in there and get it clean. Doesn't always work. They had the bore snake for a while. Problem with that is once you go through one time, you can't tell whether your gun barrel is clean or not. So they've come up with these polymer white objects that go into your gun barrel, and you can tell exactly what comes out, and it's not abrasive to your gun. So it's a really good product. Like us, they came up with it in the field, and so we want you to check them out. A great company, Barrel Buddy. It's what they're called, barrelbuddy.com, BARREL buddy.com. Check them out. So in your book, Ron, the red wagon is kind of a metaphor, but it's really good. So explain a little bit about kind of your mindset and what that means and kind of what that metaphor stands for in your life, because I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, well, thanks very much. Yeah, most of us had some type of wagon when we were little kids. It was a toy and what have you, and we did a lot of things with it, right? It served a lot of purposes. But as I began to think about, as you get older, you look back on your life, when your baby gets out of college and starts having her own babies and gets married and all that type of stuff, you start reflecting. And for me, the parts of the wagon were literally like parts of life. And that if you grabbed a hold of the handle, you were going to lead, right? If you were the front wheels, you could change directions, but you still followed the lead of the handle. If you were the rear wheels, all you do is turn. right? That you don't have any control other than pushing forward or pulling backward. And then sometimes you're just the cargo. So the point is that at different points in our life, we are represented by all of those things.
Yep.
And a lot of people believe that they should only have the handle and should never be the cargo. But sometimes in our areas of our life, let's say our spiritual life, say I'm in a valley, I just need to crawl in and be the cargo and let somebody else have the handle. And, we have a son that has a disability, has autism. And Lisa and I had to realize that he's going to be cargo for us the rest of his life, no matter what. And so I just thought it was a good metaphor to use through the different areas of your life, whether it be spiritual, business, relationship, finance. And it related to me that way. And the purpose was a lot like you guys. I mean, there's a lot of people, there's not very many Tiger Woods in the world or even Billy Grahams, but there's a lot of everyday people that if they'll just kind of take the next steps, they can have a significant impact, for the Lord.
Good advice.
No, it was great. It spawned a great discussion between my wife and I this morning because I told her our guest and who was going to be on, and she said, "What's the name of his book?" And I said, "The Little Red Wagon: Life Lessons from the Little Red Wagon." And she went, "Oh," she said, "I have so many good memories of." We had a red wagon. I was like, "You had a red wagon?" Of course, Al, you remember we had a red wagon.
Oh, yeah. Ours was dangerous.
Well, that's what I was fixed to say here. She told me about cute puppies going in the wagon and doing picnics. And I said, the last time I saw our red wagon, the handle had been broken because it was used like a spear.
As a weapon.
Yeah. And I said, we were trying to go down this big hill during an ice storm.
That's right. On the wagon.
It was we were racing various things. I don't know where y'all were because this was really extremely dangerous.
One of us was on a piece of tin. Somebody was on the red wagon. Somebody else had two pieces of siding because, we don't get a lot of snow here in Louisiana. So.
What's crazy is if you had pivoted left,
in the river.
You're in the river. I mean, you're dead, hypothermia. And so I told her our stories, and she said, well, maybe there's somewhere in that book about y'all needed just to hand the handle to Jesus. And I said, yeah, that's what we needed, babe. But, it's so crazy that metaphor, I mean, it immediately, who didn't have a red wagon when they were little? And,
well, I love the way, Ron, that you, by the way, your personal, to do a life journey. I mean, the metaphor was great, but you were so transparent, even about your own life, which I thought was really powerful. And I wanted you to comment. One of the things that the chapter that really locked me in was the one called Taking the Next Uncomfortable Step, which I thought was a really powerful one. So tell a little bit about that, kind of what that was for you, but also how important that is for other people. Because, we don't like the idea of doing something uncomfortable. But you made such a strong point that that's at the point where you grew the most, is when you took that step. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, and I'll let Allie comment on it as well, because we've had these conversations within our family before. But, what I found was that most people stop just before something happens. And whether or not that's our own fear, whether or not that's Satan trying to keep us from doing what God wants us to do, I'm not always sure. But what I've tried to learn myself and teach other people is that, okay, most people know what the next step is, but it's uncomfortable, so we want to stay in our comfort zone. And I've just encouraged people that I've worked with, people that, my family, just take the next uncomfortable step. Yes, it could be embarrassing. It could make you take a step backwards, but take it anyway, because that's the only way you'll be able to discover what's on the other side of the mountain. And I don't know, Allie probably has some thoughts on that too, because we've talked about that a lot.
I think my parents did a really good job of course, leading us in faith and not putting too much pressure on us to make the next big decision perfectly. For example, when I was trying to decide where to go to college, I grew up in Texas and I decided I wanted to go out of Texas, but I was nervous. I didn't know if I was going to know anyone at this college that I ended up going to in South Carolina. And both of my parents did a really good job of giving me peace by saying, you know what? You're not in control. All you can do really is the next right step or the next uncomfortable step. And I say a lot, do the next right thing in faith with excellence and for the glory of God, which is the same kind of concept. Ultimately, like, God is sovereign. We're not in control of the ultimate conclusion of our life. God is. So we have to do the next right thing in faith and leave the rest to God, which is a very freeing, a very liberating feeling. They said college is not prison. You make the best decision that you can with the information that you have right now, and God is going to guide your steps. And having that really kind of like smaller view of yourself, rather than as someone who is, well, I'm in charge, I dictate all my steps, I'm going to determine the direction this goes. And just saying, you know what, I only have the capacity and ability to do the next right thing. As a finite person, that's all I can do. That's a very, I think, just like joy-inducing feeling, knowing that I'm not ultimately in charge and I can only put one right foot in front of the other.
So Allie, you actually had one of the lines that's in the book that jumped out at me is your dad attributed to you. He took you hunting, and you said, "I don't think this is a hunt. It's more like a nature walk." So
yeah.
So did you guys hunt a lot? I mean, did y'all do a lot of stuff when you were young? Obviously, from the book, you can tell y'all had a close relationship, but what was that like?
Yeah, that's probably the extent of my hunting expertise. Sorry, this is probably not the right podcast to share that on. But yes, we didn't go hunting a lot. We did have a property in Texas that we would go out to. There were a lot of nature observing opportunities. I think we went hunting a couple times, tried to hunt squirrels when I was 8. I liked the whole process, the picking out the different camouflage outfits and things like that. But I probably had the same attitude about hunting that I did about sports, which was, what are we doing for lunch?
Yeah, that's right.
And yeah, I can't say that I was any, I don't know, Annie Oakley or anything like that with the gun.
I know a woman who shares the same thoughts that you do, and I've been married to her for 32 years, so I understand that completely.
I hunted when I was young. We lived outside of Junction City in Lilly, if you remember where Lilly is.
Oh, yeah.
We lived down there on some property, and so I hunted by myself and then duck hunted as a young man, and still that today. In fact, I should have brought a picture of him. I have a champion chocolate lab that's actually going to be in the national finals for the hunt test and the super retriever series.
Well, you know,
I'm excited about that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a whole bit I do about chocolate lab, so I'm going to mention that.
I have 2 dogs being trained as I speak, and come out of Old Blue, Jase.
Yeah.
One of them's name is Deuce.
Are they whining?
No.
Hey.
That's my dog's name. Phil is Deuce.
Really?
Deuce, boy, you know.
What is going
Good
on?
night.
I'm telling you, we've got synergy here. We've got synergy working with this family that we come up with the same name. So
He's been training. I'll pick him up in September for teal season, and we'll see what he can do.
Good.
Because Old Blue, his dad, that dog's still alive. He's about 14, but he has retrieved, oh my goodness, hundreds and hundreds of ducks for us that we never would have gotten. But he rounds them up. So it's a lot of fun working with dogs while you're out there on the hunt.
I love that more than anything, really. I mean,
You betcha.
that's the favorite part.
So you mentioned in the book, you have an illustration there from Lonesome Dove, and this statement got me. You said that Lonesome Dove is the greatest TV miniseries of all time.
Well, we have another thing in common.
There you go. I had to mention that because we talk about it all the time on this podcast.
Oh my gosh, we quote that all the time around our house.
That was a qualifier.
That was
for
a qualifier
my future
for
husband.
Yeah, for
Jason,
Allie's husband.
Are you ready for your musical little bit?
No, I'm not doing that, Phil. I was making dove calls earlier. That was the good, bad, and the ugly, by the way. But I'm not going to make any more bird sounds with my hands.
Now Dad's trying to get Jace to perform. I like that. It's like, perform for our guests.
Lonesome dove. I can do a dove sound.
Oh, Lonesome Dove.
With my
Well,
hand.
do the dove sound, Jace. Come on.
Oh, my goodness. Everybody did this well, you might have done this, Allie Beth, when you were taking your nature walks. But so if you put your hands together and put air, which is a dove, and you can, if you want to show an exciting dove. So
that's impressive.
That's very good of the morning.
thank you. I didn't work hard on it. I've been doing it since I was 4 back in a little place called Junction City, Arkansas. I was under the house one time making that sound.
Yeah.
And later he got a
Sounded
whipping
down
for it. So it's a conflicted thing now going forward.
Yeah, and a
Yeah.
guy wrote a song about it, When the Doves Cry. And no, I'm just making this up. No, I think that was a Prince song.
So, Ron, our last little bit here, tell folks what you hope they get from the book. Kind of, people always ask somebody, why'd you write this book? But I think I know from reading it, but tell folks kind of why you wrote it and why you think it's something that would bless them.
Well, first of all, I wrote it because I believe that, again, there are a lot more people that are like me out there than there are like the superstars of the world. And that I want to encourage people that you have in front, no matter what your challenges were, you have in front of you the opportunity to take the next uncomfortable step, to look to have your life guided by God and your faith and what have you, make sure that stays in place. But that also, I believe God honors righteous action. And so, if we wait forever, we'll end up, probably going to get to heaven, but we're just going to be waiting. And so I want people to be able to go out there and not only have their faith, but live their faith through the actions that they take, not only in business, but also with their family, and realize that if you need to understand that at sometimes you're going to be the cargo. Sometimes you're going to be the back wheels, but sometimes you're going to be the lead. If you think you're going to pull that handle the whole time, you're going to have a very frustrating life. You have to realize where you are at different points in your life with different areas of your life.
Excellent advice.
I thought it was a great book, and I was glad you brought it up about your son, about Daniel, because that chapter touched me as well, that not only is it what you teach people and your children especially, but what they teach you. Which I thought was really powerful.
Well, I want to say too, we're in the book of Luke in our normal podcast, and I think it's probably the number one book for showing that Jesus was for the poor and those who were sick and suffering and those from the wrong side of the tracks, and it just over and over, which is very inspiring that our Lord is a champion to all people. But I know you had to be vulnerable writing this book, and I think I heard on one of your podcasts where I saw that you and your wife were diagnosed with cancer, and I just thought, wow, y'all have talked about that, y'all have attacked that, y'all have discussed that, the things you wrote in that book, and it just made it made me kind of emotional, when y'all said that, because I was like, well, they're just dealing with this head on. And I wanted to say that we've been praying for you and your wife. And
thank you very much.
It's been inspirational to kind of just see you living your life based on what you just wrote about, So I wanted to mention that.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And we're proud of all of our kids. We're very proud of Allie Beth. As you know, she's taken the best of her mother and just expanded that. And we're very, very proud of her, what she's done.
So, Allie Beth, we joked about this before you guys came on, that it seems to be either you're on our podcast or one of us is on yours when you're pregnant. I don't know what that means. Somehow it's all aligned, but you're expecting again, correct? I follow you on Twitter, so I already knew that. But yeah, so tell us kind of what's going on.
I thought that was from the first time I saw you 4 years ago. I said, her belly's big again.
I know. Thought I was still pregnant.
What he said was, Allie Beth, he said, I didn't want to say anything, but I wasn't sure if you were pregnant or just was hooked on cornbread, I think was the way he so articulate.
Yes, it's a good chance that it's probably both. I met Phil for the first time a few years ago, and he was gracious enough to come on my podcast. And he didn't say anything. Well, I was like 8 months pregnant at that point. So he could have safely said something, but he kept his observations to himself. And I learned later it's because he actually has a kind of muddy history with this. of actually telling someone that they're pregnant when they're not pregnant.
Yeah.
So even though I was about to pop, he was like, nope, I'm not going to make that mistake again, which is probably good.
Yeah,
That
you
shows
got me
great
figured
discipline.
out now, Allie Beth.
which shows you that we
That's
can all
good.
grow. That's that happened on more than one occasion, unfortunately.
Yes. But
so
let me just say, if I
ahead.
can just say one thing just to tout my dad's book, is that you can tell he is, I mean, this is sincere. He's a very humble person. And of course, he wouldn't take any credit for the accomplishments that he has achieved. And it is to God be the glory and the grace of God. But I just he has led such a life of success really coming from nothing. I mean, you guys know Junction City roots, not necessarily the fanciest place to come from. And he has endured a lot of adversity. I mean, time after time in different stages of his life. I feel very fortunate to have gained the wisdom that he has gleaned from the hardships in his own life. And his, one of the themes that he has told us is that you shouldn't have to learn from your own mistakes, learn from someone else's mistakes. That's actually how you can gain wisdom. And he has just been so diligent in passing that wisdom down to us. And if there's anyone who embodies taking the next uncomfortable step, I mean, everything that he has accomplished has been because he has been willing to take an uncomfortable, inconvenient, sacrificial step. And that's why he has achieved all the things that he has achieved, of course, by the mercy and the providence of God. And so if that's something that I know, especially for my generation, we're so used to instant gratification. We're so used to things coming easily. We're like a microwave generation. If you want the time tested stuff, the stuff that our generation typically just kind of puts off and says that's too hard, then you should read this book. Good thing is it only takes a day to read, but you're going to get that timeless wisdom of, how do you build a legacy? How do you build a life that's not just glorifying to God, but is successful because you did the next hard but right thing. So I know my dad won't brag on himself, but I just wanted to brag on him because all the wisdom that I've gleaned and been able to apply to my life, he puts in this little readable book. And it really is such a helpful tool.
Well said.
That's the best endorsement ever, Mr. Ron.
No question about that.
Well, look, if we had never met you, just based on our time we've met and spent with Allie Beth, I would have known that you were a good person and you had something going on, because to produce children who are adults that impact the world and the kingdom the way that she's doing and that we're trying to do says a lot about, your values and who you are. So we commend you on that. Congratulations on the book. I'm assuming folks just get it where they get books. Is there any special place they can go?
Anywhere you get books, Amazon. It'll be coming out on Audible here in a couple of weeks. It's, if people want to contact me, they can reach me at ron@ronsimmons.com.
Okay.
Love to be able to help any way I can.
Well, look, I read it. It's outstanding. I highly recommend it as well. So we appreciate you guys coming on. It's always a good excuse to have Allie Beth on. But now, Ron, with our Junction City connection, we feel like we're brothers from another mother now. So we got that.
I feel like there's a duck hunt coming somewhere that we can have some fun.
I think you're going to
work it in.
I think you're going to have to come get in the blind with us for us to get the whole Junction City story. No doubt about it.
I can't wait to do that. That'll be fun.
All right,
where we're doing this podcast, all the vehicles and the mud vehicles and the decoy, that's where they are, right here, all around
right on the other side of the wall.
Yep.
Nice.
So you'll love it. It'll be your playground.
It's actually quite scary, but it is where we
I bet Allie's is a lot nicer than ours.
Yeah, if you want to bring your family, Allie, you can hang out with my wife uptown.
That's right. We'll put you
That's
someplace nice.
awesome. I was about to say, y'all can do that. I'll be inside eating cornbread still.
Tending to babies, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for coming on. Congratulations, Ron. You. And folks, be sure and go and get this book and check it out. It's always great to have Allie Beth on. And, it was really amazing because I felt a real connection to his story. We didn't get into this on the podcast, but his parents split up when they were in Junction City. And so then it was a lot of difficulty.
Yeah, he was a teenager.
Yeah, he was young. And
I saw that he worked at a grocery store too. You did the same thing.
Yeah, there was a lot of similarities.
What are the odds that I would run back into somebody who lived in Junction City, Arkansas?
Yeah.
And
lived in our
same
house. But the house was on school property. So it belonged to the school,
Yep.
which is why we were there. And then, of course, his dad was the band leader, so then they were right after us. But what are the odds of
He
that?
said, "Yeah, we had to do a little spring cleaning."
What do you say? A little leftover dog issue. I don't even know what
He
that
was
means.
being real nice,
He
but he was saying, "Boy,
So you know what's funny, Jay? So I spoke up there not too many years ago, and so I went back over and looked, and it was so amazing because, like anything from your childhood, first of all, the whole area was just so tiny, but in my mind, it was huge. We roamed and would go away for hours. I thought, and everything was right there within view of that where that house used to be. The house is gone now, and there's a bus barn there now. But in my mind, there was a mountain behind our house. Well, it was a hill, it was just but when you're a
I
child,
feel the same way.
you know.
Everything looks, I've thought that many times in my life.
Yeah.
I was like, man, this was tiny.
That's right. All my exploration areas were all within, sight of the house, which is pretty amazing. Well, anyway, we love, Allie Beth is just so sharp, and her stuff is so good. And look, she's very godly and spiritual, but then she's, conservative and, man, cultural wars. She takes on everything, which, she's an amazing person.
Yeah, I enjoy listening to her.
It's always good. So anyway, be sure and check out his book. It really is good. And he's got a lot of really interesting things in there about his life. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that, as well as what we're going to be talking about on the next podcast in our overtime. If you want to follow us over, blazetv.com/unashamed is where we're headed.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.